Welcome to Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, with your hosts, John Gaspard and me, Jim Cunningham.
Hey there, Jim.
John, how the heck are you? It seems like forever.
It does, and then starting out with technical issues, and now I can hear you and you can hear me. Just a couple old guys on the internet is all
That's
this is
exactly right.
Me.
A new computer is not for me, and yet here we are.
Here we are. No, it's working now, and everybody can hear you, and I can see you. So all is good. Welcome to episode 521. Before we jump into anything else, I should have mentioned before, and because we are both bad at marketing, we are now available as a podcast on Spotify for anyone who listens to Spotify. And apparently it helps on Spotify if people listening to it rate it and give it some stars and maybe say a few things about it. So if you are listening to us on Spotify or would rather move over to Spotify and hear us, please just rate us so that their algorithm will tell other people to listen. I believe all of the audiobooks are also now on Spotify.
Wow.
Yes. So everything in the world you need to listen to about Eli Marks, I think, is over there on Spotify. So anyway, I needed to mention that. Today, we are heading at high speed toward the end of season 5, and we have a delightful guest, Mikayla Oz, who we both met 2 years ago at Abercorn-Dabra, and then I spent more time with her at this last one, and just had a delightful time chatting with her. It was one of those things where everybody has something nice to say about her. She's a great spirit and also a terrific magician. And as we learned, something of a mad genius entrepreneur.
Amen. Yeah, I was really blown away by what she's accomplished.
As was I. Her career in magic, as she was very quick to point out, has gone full circle from seeing a magician in a library as a child to now becoming the library magician as an adult. Mikayla, hello. Thank you so much for being here.
Delight.
I'm going to just jump right in. Our research, faulty as it is, says that you started performing at the age of 4. Is that true?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So what was that circumstance, and how did that early performance shape who you are today as a performer?
For sure. Yeah, no, I got started when I was 4 years old after seeing a magician at the library. And it's kind of a weird full circle moment now, but now like the past 5 years, I've been doing all these libraries, performing at them. So it's kind of a cool thing. But yeah, I got started when I was 4, saw a magician here in Des Moines, Iowa, which is where I'm located, performing at it. And then with my mom, I would check out the little magic books and I would read all of them. And my mom and I would create all the magic tricks from around the house. And then yeah, it was fun. Magic was more of an arts and crafts as a kid. And then it kind of developed into, I really loved performing too. So yeah, we would just make all the little tricks and out of all the magic books. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, at least.
Do you remember the first trick that you think you mastered as a youngster?
I made a square and circle out of construction paper. So I had a book, I believe it was just called My First Magic Kit, or My First Magic Book, I mean. And in that book, yeah, they talked about the basic bones of a square circle. And I made that out of construction paper. So it was 2 paper tubes with the box, or no, 1 paper tube with the box around it, and then the black art tube. And yeah, you could do the whole trick. It was really fun though.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And now, we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but you're doing close-up magic. I've seen corporate events, full-blown stage productions. What's the process for you if you have to tailor something that's a pretty wide swath?
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of doing everything. I would say at the exact moment, I'm doing a lot of family shows. So, which is more like your stand-up stage parlor kind of magic. Yeah, but to kind of tailor it for a client's event, it can be a lot of work that goes into it. And honestly, now I'm trying to get to a point where I have these set shows that they're just kind of plug and play depending what the event is. And that I'm marketing towards specific events that I want, instead of people reaching out to me and being like, oh, hey, could you do this random oddball thing? So then at least I can have some more creative constraints, I guess, to be able to create the magic around and just have these plug and play types of shows, if that makes sense. So especially like with the libraries, I'm doing this summer, I have 106 different, like this summer I have 106 family shows. So
oh my goodness.
yeah, it's crazy. But I'm pretty much running the same show all summer, and it makes it really easy because then I get to and it's a brand new show that I wrote at the beginning of the year, and it's just makes it easy for me to really refine it and work out all the kinks for it, and then not have to create custom things for different events,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, 106. That's some flight time there.
Yeah. The listeners at home could not see Jim's jaw drop at that number.
They probably heard it, though.
They probably
as it hit
did.
the floor.
So that, for me, I need to know, can you sort of just walk us through a typical week for you in the summer, or what a day is like, and how are you getting from one thing to another, and how much downtime do you have, and how much reset time do you have?
Yeah. So June is super heavy, or June is heavier than July is for me. And really those are the two big months. And then I have a couple week break. I start back up again like the second week of August. But yeah, really June and July, I'm doing somewhere between like 3 to 5 shows a day.
A day?
A day, yeah, different libraries. So I'm doing so for example, I'll do a 9, an 11, a 1, a 3, and then an evening show. Or no, actually a 3:30. So a 1, a 3:30, and then an evening show, usually 6:30 or 7.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
I didn't know there were that many libraries in Des Moines.
Yeah, well, so I'm doing this all across kind of the Midwest. Iowa is kind of my bread and butter. I've been very fortunate to kind of get in good with a lot of the libraries.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun. I love it. And it gives me a lot of time to just try out new things and work on new material and do shows or do tricks that I've always wanted to do, but I've never been able to. And then this year I really wanted to create a lot of like more original things for the show. So I created everything, or like not created, but like I customized everything. Like I'm using like a Forgetful Freddy, and it's tailored to look like a mummy. The show this year for the libraries, I should just explain, is called The Cursed Show. So the theme this year for the libraries, at least in Iowa, is level up. Yeah, it's all about different levels. So how can you get, like for Mario, for example, you start off on level 1, and then each one it progresses a little bit more challenging. So, and it's fun for all the performers because we get to put our own little spin on whatever we think that means. So for my show, I call it The Cursed Show. And The Cursed Show is at the beginning of the show, I do a manipulation segment, but then I opens with this mummy. And then I explain to the kids that if the mummy's head falls off, then I get cursed. And then, of course, the mummy's head falls off. And then throughout the rest of the show, all the magic tricks don't work. And then at the very finale of the show, we do a trick together. And then the trick finally goes right, but it catches us off guard. And then I go back through the whole show through like a segment of music, and then everything comes back together. So it's like, it's a fun way for me to kind of bring everything together. And it's like, it's a new format that I'm trying, because before in my old shows, I would just set something up at the beginning of the show and then it would come full circle at the end. But now it's kind of, there's a through line a little bit more throughout the show too.
Yes, that's great. And no wonder with that amount of shows, no wonder you almost have to have it be plug and play.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Otherwise, you go out of your mind. I can't imagine the 5 shows a day if it wasn't locked down.
Yeah, and this summer I feel like I was a bit ambitious because some of the tricks are I used to hold everything in a suitcase and I would just bring in the one suitcase. And then this year I have 3 tables that I'm setting up, I guess. But for the most part, everything is just I set it on the table and it's almost pretty much ready to go. And then the biggest reset for this summer is I'm using a snake wand. So it's like Louis Fox's snake wand, Snake Surprise or something like that. And all the snakes there's like 15 snakes that all pop out of the snake wand at the end of the show. So just shoving all the snakes back into the wand it takes the most amount of time. But
that's great.
I hope you're not trying to do that as you're driving to the next gig. That would be really unsafe.
Please.
What
no.
sort of age range are you dealing with for these shows?
Yeah, for the libraries, it's like anywhere from like 4 to 12. I guess is like the tentative age range, and then all of their parents too. So I want to make it engaging for the kids as well as for the families. Yeah.
Right. We've had David Kay on the show. In fact, we just revisited something he said about, as Silly Billy, knowing what he needed to do for each age range that he's seeing. And you're seeing quite a range there, plus the parents. How much are you adjusting what you're doing so that each group is getting a little something from your performance?
Yeah, I kind of have to make the show pretty universal for that age range. So I have like little flavors for each child. Like some of them are more like look, don't see kind of things. So where the magician does something and then acts like they don't see it. And that's really good for like your 4 through like 8-year olds. But then that 9, 10, 11, 12-year old range, I have things that are a bit more like high stakes in a sense. So it kind of draws them into. So it's just giving these kids different flavors throughout the magic show, but still keeping it engaging. So I kind of have to keep it on both ends for the kids.
And do you use a lot of comedy in what you're doing? And so how do you strike the right balance then between being funny and humor and mystery so that neither sort of undercuts the other?
That's a great question. I'm kind of working that out too, because I don't want it to be just a comedy show or like a clown show. So where it's very over the top funny, but because I still want it to be magical. Even with this show, I think that's one of the things I've been kind of developing, because early on at the beginning of the summer with this show, I thought it was very comedy heavy. So then I wanted to kind of make it a bit more magical and emphasize the moments a little bit more. And then I had a couple magicians watch the show too and give me some feedback on what they thought was good and bad of the show as well. And then now I think it's found more of a balance, and especially like the end of the show, where the beginning and the end are both very heavy with magic, because the beginning of the show is like the high, like I really like manipulation. So like things with like billiard balls, like card manipulation, those kinds of things. So I do a lot of that at the beginning just to set the tone of the show that, hey, look, I am talented.
Hey, you got to prove that, don't you?
Exactly.
I mean,
right?
you just got to prove that to an audience.
For
Relax,
sure.
you're in good hands. That's smart.
And even to kind of win over those parents too, who are bringing their kids, or the day camp people who are bringing their kids, and then the more of the middle of the show is kind of more that high energy, like comedy magic. And then the end of the show is very heavy with magic, where the mummy's head reappears, and then the lollipops appear, and then the bird appears as the finale of the show.
How much do you think, percentage-wise, does the show change from the beginning of the summer to the end if you were to compare and go? Because you've got so many opportunities there to tweak things. What's it like at the end? How close is it to what you started with?
The script is a lot more refined. I know exactly what I'm going to say. I know pretty much most of the jokes. I'm always listening for a child to say like a good joke. And I've started recording all of the shows.
Sure.
And I'm watching those in between each of my shows. But I would say the tricks themselves, for the most part, are pretty similar. Like this summer, though, there was a few things that I've created in the middle of the summer that just helps the show be a little bit more smoother, like something to make the mummy's head disappear that's a bit more visual. But I'm kind of learning as I'm going with that, because even though you rehearse everything before the summer starts, there's still these all like little things that pop up that you're like, oh, if I just tweak this one way, then it'll help the flow of it. I would say it's 70% together by the start of the summer, and then the 30% kind of comes by the rest of the 30% comes by the end of the summer, with just what I'm saying and what I'm actually doing and the pacing and blocking throughout the show. I think at the beginning of the summer, like during the first like 15 shows, so like the first like week or 2 weeks, the show was like 48 minutes, which is too long. And especially it didn't give me enough time to reset. But now the show's down. I've shaved off like 8 minutes and it's a bit tighter.
That's that flight time.
Exactly.
We always say that in general, you won't recognize the show after you've done it 100 times. It's so much more refined than when you started. Even if you started with good stuff, it just doing it over and over gives you a comfort level and an ability to really fine-tune things so that the audience has a better experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Jim, let me ask you this, because you do your Renaissance show on weekends during part of the summer, and it isn't as material heavy because you're doing bits and then you're introducing acts and doing bits and introducing acts. But you do have a script and you do have a framework. With you and Laszlo doing, what is it, 3 shows on? 3 shows on Saturday, 2 shows on Sunday. And then some weekends you're also doing a Monday or a Friday in there. How much do you think what you guys are doing evolves over that much shorter period of time?
Yeah, well, it's a huge evolution as always, and I think I learned that when I started at the Renaissance Festival. The artistic director there at the time, a guy named Lee Walker, I'm sure you remember him, John,
Hmm.
God rest his soul, said it point blank to me. He said, your show's good. You're not going to recognize it by the end of the Renaissance Festival. It's going to change so much and evolve so much, and you're going to learn so much about who you are in front of people. So it always changes, and now we have largely done away. We've been there so long doing this show that we've largely done away with any written bits. We now have a backlog of stuff, but also we just the first part of the show we allow the audience to ask us questions
Okay.
about our personal life, about stories, that things that have happened and so it always is. It's never the same, which is really fun for us as performers because I never know what is that question going to be, and I got to roll with it.
And what percentage of repeat customers do you have every year?
75%, I would
Okay.
say.
So they know you and they know
Yeah.
all that, as opposed.
It's a weird. It's just a crazy. I don't know how I stumbled into it, and I don't know why it works. To be honest with you, I couldn't sit down and diagram it. It's a show for people who have absolutely no interest in seeing a show,
Mm-hmm.
and we figured it out. So,
All right. Well, back to Mikayla.
yeah,
Mikayla, I
please.
just think this is for me fascinating because the playground on which you're working, you don't just say Des Moines, you say Midwest. You're smart enough to go, there's not enough to keep me employed on a full-time basis. And so you've been smart enough to broaden things out. And that takes us to the Magician School. And I'm really curious as to exactly what that is and when did it start and how has it grown?
So for those of you who don't know, the Magician School is like my approach to after school programs, teaching kids how to do the fundamentals of different kinds of magic tricks. I really got started at least teaching kids magic when I was in high school. I was doing birthday parties and stuff in high school. And I had a couple people who asked me if I did like private magic lessons. And I didn't know anything about it, but I started working with a couple kids while I was in high school. And then once I went to college, I met a lady named Aileen, and she brought me on at her school to teach an after school magic program. So then all while I was going through college, I was during the weekdays after I would get done with my college classes, I would go and teach kids different magic tricks. And really during that time, what I didn't realize at the time, what I was building was I was kind of learning what children like are receptive to, what they might not be receptive to, what maybe I should be teaching to a student, what I shouldn't be teaching, like all of these little things are really how to work with kids, like because teaching is very different than doing magic. Sure, there's a lot of crossover, but there's a big difference. Yeah, so I was teaching these kids as an after school program, and then I graduated college. I was planning on doing magic full time, and I pretty much was. Magic's the only job I've ever like had. But like now I finally, once I was done with college, I was finally able to jump in and try out all of this magic. But then the pandemic happened. So when the pandemic happened, I ended up pivoting to do these online magic programs because all of these after school programs here locally, these students still needed to be serviced in some capacity. A lot of these schools pivoted to online curriculum, and I kind of filled that gap, I guess, and it was really successful. So I started filming all these videos that we'd send out to these schools, and that's what the Magician Schools kind of started off as. But now, as it's evolved, now we're more teaching teachers how to run our programs. So now it's more of a professional development program.
Wow,
So yeah,
that's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
So when it came to the virtual version of the Magician School, I mean, I imagine in pre-virtual, you were showing up at a school with a couple big tubs of stuff. My wife used to do mad science things after school. So I understand the concept of showing up with a bunch of stuff and putting on a class of some kind. When everything went virtual, how did you get stuff in their hands and do that sort of thing via the video?
Originally, the idea was here's magic tricks that you can do with things you can find around the house, which is kind of still a big core component of the magician school curriculum. And it's that I wanted to make magic accessible for students. I want sure like students can learn, anybody can learn a magic trick with a fancy magic prop, but I wanted students to, in case something ever happened to that prop, to be able to recreate that magic trick with things they could find out in the real world. So a lot of the things early on were things they could find and make with paper and string and whatever they had around the house. Or we had a lot of printable magic tricks that the schools could print off. And then they did like these after school drives. So where during the pandemic, parents would drive by the school, and then the after school programs would have a little like grab and go bag that they would give to all these students. But for the most part, though, it was all online. So I didn't have any supplies or any costs as far as that goes, which is now changed. And now we offer everything.
How great is that? I admire anybody who could pivot the way you pivoted away from what we all had to pivot away from to find. I sat around for a year and a half.
Good for you. I wish I could.
There was just nothing to do. So I really admire somebody who can go, oh, how about if I just pivot like this, and now it's a full blown deal. I just think that's great. I think that's so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not one to sit around. I don't like just twiddling my thumbs and not doing anything, which is a blessing and a curse. But
I, on the other hand, am very good at twiddling my thumbs.
Yes,
and,
that is a well-known feature.
And I wish I did more of what you do. So
for magicians listening, I would evoke the name of Jim and my one of our favorite people, Joe Calloway, who is a motivational speaker, although he hate that term. He's a business speaker. He's a business expert. And he would always say, when telling a story like this, he would then say, so what's your version of that? And that's what I would say to people listening is, you're not going to do what Mikayla did, but you are going to need to pivot at some point. And when you do pivot, what's going to be your version of that? Because you can either be Jim and sit there twiddling your thumbs, or you can go, all right, that's not going to work. This needs to work. And I imagine that not only, I admire the pivoting that you did, Mikayla, but you also, I'm guessing, over the course of pre-pandemic doing the school programs and doing stuff during the pandemic and then the library programs, you have probably assembled, this is an old world term, a Rolodex of potential clients that would be truly enviable when it comes to where's my next job coming from. They already know you. They know what you can offer. They know that you pivot. That's a huge resource you must have.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the people who I've worked with and I'm able to work with, and they're two separate worlds for the most part. At least the libraries and then the after school people. But yeah, I'm starting to see more and more crossover actually of those two worlds, especially with the after school stuff. I'm starting to do a lot of like magic shows for them during the school year as like an added thing. I'm taking the shows that I'm working on during the summers, and then that's the show that I'm doing in the schools.
So smart.
Yeah,
that's so smart. I also, it occurs to me that the idea of a magician's school, the way you have put it together with a curriculum and how this all works, it could be rolled out by you all across America.
Yeah, right now we're working, I don't know the exact numbers, but at last time I looked, we're working with about 350 school districts around the country.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I'm just delighted by that.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a lot of contacts just all over. And I think I've worked with 47 out of the 50 states.
Wow.
With magician school. But now
no surprise that you're ahead of me. I'm going to just go back to twiddling my thumbs.
Oh, you're fine. But the interesting thing now, it's talk about pivoting, is after school programs, or I don't know if you guys have heard anything about this, but just due to where the world's at, after school programs, the funding is being withheld. And all of these schools rely on a lot of government funding of some sort. And that's what they use to purchase programs like ours and purchase all like Mad Science, for example. All of those programs have outside funding that schools are using to be able to have access to high quality programs like that. And so with all of this funding being withheld, it's really, I'm curious to see how this works. So what the next evolution of things is. It's gonna really affect the students first, like the teachers and the students, which breaks my heart because I don't know. The magician school is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my whole entire life. I love doing the magic shows, but the idea that I could teach students confidence or teach students a way of an icebreaker, or some of these other things that are outside of magic specifically, like teach them to be accountable, teach them to be creative, cooperative, like those kinds of things. And with this funding being withheld, these students are not going to have access to cool stuff after school. Instead, they're going to be stuck with doing the paper plate crafts.
Yeah. Breaks my heart. You just don't know when you drop that pebble in the pond where those ripples are going to end up, and it's going to affect probably your livelihood too. Then, if they can't, and so it just, boy, oh boy, how frustrating is that? I hope that communities will find another way to support those things for the kids. Yeah. And I imagine they will. I imagine that communities are going to see the value in after school programs and figure out a way to continue with or without federal funding. But gosh dang it, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Well, let's turn to something a little more uplifting. That's all well and good, but I want to know, because you grew up doing magic, essentially, in some form or another, or having an interest from age 4, who are the magicians, living or gone, who have had the most influence on you?
The Des Moines, like the Iowa Des Moines magic scene has had a huge impact on my life. There's been a lot of really cool people locally who are professional magicians, or even like semi-professional or hobbyists or whatever you call it, who've had a big impact. Probably the biggest is Steve Daly. He produces Abercorndabra, and then he's kind of brought me in with all of that. I met him when I was 8. When he was coming through town, I was a part of the local magic club, and it was the first time I ever came to a club meeting. So IBM 167, it's called the Justo High Joe Magic Club, or the Des Moines Magic Club. First magic club I ever went to was actually Steve's lecture when he was back in town from doing his national lecture tour. Yeah, he changed my life. Like, he taught me that relationship first. He taught me some fun tricks, which as a kid, that's what you want to learn. You want to learn the magic tricks, But then every time he came into town, I was so excited because then we would talk business too. And I just have always been drawn. I like the business side of things too. Like, I think it fuels me just as much as the magic does. And he taught me how to book these birthday parties when I was like 12 or 13. Actually, I had to be 13 because I think the next year I got the first few shows I did, my mom was taking me to. And then the next year I got my or my work permit, and then I was driving to magic shows. But yes, I had to be like 13. And he taught me the business side of magic. So that was really cool. And then along the way, I met a guy by the name of Ray Thompson. And Ray Thompson, he was a mentalist and did a lot of county fairs. And he kind of had me on his roster of people when I was younger. And he would take me to some of these like county fair association conferences and help me book shows. And then I also met Ben Eulin, who's a local here in Des Moines, who's the longest running amusement park magician in the country. He's amazing. He has a great show. And if you're ever in the Des Moines, Iowa area, like, definitely go to Adventureland and check out his magic show.
Yeah,
he's a working pro. Like, he's a class act.
Talk about having a lot of shows under your belt.
No kidding.
My, he blows me out of the water.
Yeah.
I'll just say, backing up to Steve Daly, my first encounter with him was, I forget whose podcast it was, but the topic of the podcast was why you'd be insane as a magician to move to Las Vegas. And he had such a cogent argument about, what are you doing? You're an idiot. Stay where you are and do exactly what Mikayla's doing, which is develop your territory so that you're bulletproof in your territory. Don't try to go to Vegas and create something that you're starting from lower than scratch. Anyway, if I can find that, I will put it in the show notes, because that was my first encounter with him, and then dealing with him from Abercorndabra.
Great guy.
A terrific guy, just the kind of guy you want in your corner when you're starting out.
Yeah.
Because he is so smart and so sweet, and is absolutely going to help you get on the right track. And he is a mensch. He's just a mensch. Anyway,
can I ask a question as a fellow performer about if you have I have a series of things that I do to get my mind in the right place
Hmm.
before I perform, especially right before I walk out. Do you have any pre-show rituals or mental warm-ups that kind of get yourself centered before you perform?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's anything specific. I need my coffee. I am like
Sure.
I have to feel awake before I do it. But I've been in theater my whole life too. So kind of just knowing when like I know how to turn the switch on in a
There
sense,
you go.
But like pre-show rituals, I wish I did. I do. Do you have any? I'm
I,
curious.
I do, yeah. I do have a series of things that I will do before especially if I don't feel like I am fully caffeinated or I didn't have a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
There are things I agree with you that there is a switch and I can find it and turn it on.
Yeah.
But oftentimes before I flip that switch, I do have some things that I will do, either some vocal warm ups or some tongue twisters to make sure that my mouth is working the way I want it to work,
Yeah.
and I oftentimes, especially in corporate settings, where you don't necessarily have the luxury of your own material
Hmm.
to stand on. There was a magician named Howard Thurston who used to stand in the wings and jump up and down, repeating to himself, "I love my audience. I love my audience. I love my audience. I love them. I love them." And sometimes I will do that if I feel like I'm not completely prepared here to face these people. That's one of the things that I do. And it tends to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess on that, I try to, I really, I don't like going into an environment like feeling any kind of stress. I like to feel as calm and collected, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of a quiet person. So I tend to, especially on those long drives, like I tend to just put on music or like a podcast and kind of just let my mind wander in a sense and really kind of just calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't feel I perform the best when there is a lot of outside noise, you know?
Mhm.
And I mean, sometimes when you're walking into walking into like a library, especially towards the beginning of the summer, like these librarians, they're nervous and this is their first program, or maybe they're brand new to the libraries and so they're feeling pretty jittery. And I just try to ensure to them that I'll make this the easiest act you've ever worked with. And I really do genuinely try to like live through that. I know kind of what I'm walking into in a sense. So I want to try to make everything as simple as possible for them and me, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess I don't have a pre-show where I jump up and down and say I love myself. It's more of a,
I don't do it every show, but
yeah,
on the shows that I feel like I need to do that, I
yeah,
will do it, and it does
that's
help
cool.
me. And also, I think there's just something physical about the jumping up and down
Yeah.
part that has an effect on me physiologically. I would think
Mhm.
that I'm not aware of, but it does seem to energize me in a way that when I need it, it's a good little tool to have in my belt. When he's not twiddling his thumbs, he's jumping up and down.
Yeah, I love it. Something I've kind of done at the start of the shows is I kind of riff with the audience a little bit, like as they're coming in, because in these library shows and even sometimes with the school shows, there's like 10 to 15 minutes where I could just sit off into the wing and act like I don't see the audience. Instead, I use that to kind of break the ice a little bit with the audience as they're coming into the shows. It's almost like kind of how a busker draws in a crowd a little bit. But for me, I find it a nice way to break the ice with my audience and not have to do any kind of magic, but learn a little bit about them and probe them with funny questions, which is a nice way to kind of for me to gauge where the audience is at. And I know that's not necessarily like a pre-show thing, but
No?
it is kind of like pre-show in a
Oh
sense.
yeah, and
Um,
it's smart too because it energizes you. It makes
exactly.
you comfortable before you
Yep.
start. It gets them a little warmed up, so
Yeah.
you are not hitting, the frost barrier, as I call it.
Yeah.
You've overcome that before, You didn't ever let it develop, which is that's pretty smart. Smart.
Yeah, I do it. I don't know. Have you ever done that for the Renaissance festivals? Do you have to build a crowd doing the Renaissance?
No, our crowd pays extra to come see us.
Amazing.
So they come into a room and sit down, and they get dinner and a lot of beer or wine, and so the show really takes care of itself by the time they get their salad. I think there are 2 or 3 beers or glasses of wine in, and from that point forward, you don't have to do a whole lot. You just have to be present and ride the beast. So.
Yeah, but early on in the podcast, we interviewed Morgan and West, who are no longer a duo. But one of the things that they used to do at the beginning of their show, and I'd seen them do it because they were at Magi Fest, which is where I met them, is before the show starts, they walk the crowd and chat with people and joke around with people. And it's breaking that ice, yes. But he also said that they pretty much selected who they want to bring up on stage by the time the show starts. And Matt King said the same thing. Within the first 5 minutes of his show, he's doing what he's doing, but he's picking. So he'll know who's doing stuff. And I think Mike Super does the same thing. Mike would circulate with a corporate crowd and do close-up magic and figure out if he needed a stooge. Not that Mike would ever use a stooge, but if he did, this is where to find them and just get a sense of who would be the best people to go to. So that idea of you're not hiding in the wings waiting for 15 minutes. You're using that time really constructively to make a better show.
That's just, to me, that says that you are a compassionate performer, because that idea, there are a lot of us, myself included, who might opt to sit quietly in the wings. And, hey, it's not my job to go out and glad hand people. I might do a little of that when it's over, but you know what I mean? I could get into that mode where it's like, I'm here to do what I do, and I'm going to do what I do, and then I'm going to go.
Absolutely.
So that idea, that's a very, very professional way to approach your shows. I'm going to use this time to make the experience for them and myself better. Absolutely. Rather than, sit off in the wings, smoking a heater and sipping on coffee until they say, and here she is, Mikayla. I think that says a lot about who you are as a person and as a performer.
Yeah, and I mean, I like opening with flashy visual, which I know is different than maybe a lot of performers, but I like I really am drawn to the flashy visual manipulation style of magic, which sometimes, especially like going in cold with that, and that's their first impression of you. Sure, it's cool magic, but it doesn't really break that wall a little bit. So I like to kind of break that wall a little bit, especially with kids.
This is reminding me, and I don't know why the name Jim Belushi would come up at this point.
I can track it.
I'll tell you why, because it was something very perceptive that he said, which was in itself surprising that he would say something perceptive. Anyway, we hired him for a corporate event a couple times because he had a band. And the first time we hired him, he went backstage to the video director, because we had, I think, 3 cameras shooting him. And he said, this is going to sound vain, but when I come out, I need you to keep the camera on me. And I need you to keep the camera on me for about 5 minutes. And the reason I need you to do that, and of course, this was 25 years ago, he said, was this audience is going to look at me and go, that's John Belushi's brother. And they're going to do that for 5 minutes until I make them realize I'm Jim Belushi and we love John, but this is who I am. And as a performer, he recognized he needed that time with the audience to get through that frost zone that Jim was talking about. Mm-hmm. And so I think recognizing as a performer what you need to do to get through the frost zone and then doing it is, again, a really smart a way to approach a career.
And I don't think, I'm always impressed by people who say something or are doing something that I know is right in my heart, but I don't often, I don't always do it. So I think understand that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that speaks to your level of knowledge as a performer, that you understand intuitively, it sounds to me, that this needs to happen for a variety of good reasons. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do that, even though I might rather be standing in the wings sipping
Yeah.
a cup of coffee until somebody says you're on. That's smart stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think there's a ton of other performers who have different variations of that. Like I want to say I want to say it might be Matt King, who when you enter his show, he instead of having like he's not talking, but he has like all the music that's really like funny, high energy music. And then even now in a lot of the touring shows, like as people are coming into the theater, there's videos that are playing on the screen that are funny and engaging and kind of draw your audience in. So there's a ton of different ways to kind of set the tone for what's about to happen.
Yeah. Well, I like your way.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
great. All right, let's go full circle here. I met you because of Abercorn I had heard about, as we know, I'm not a magician, and I've been to a couple pretty big magic conventions, and had heard about Abercorn. And let's face it, that's a silly name. And I think Steve does that on purpose to undercut any overt seriousness. And I remember on Eric Tate's Penguin podcast, he said in passing, I'll be gone next week. I guess I'm going to Abercorn in Iowa. We'll see. And then he came back a couple episodes later and said, I had the greatest time in the world at Abercorn. It's a really smart convention. And it's smart, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, Steve knows everybody. He just knows everybody, and he gets the very best people there. He understands how to put on a show and what is required for a show so that it's maybe basic, but some conventions don't have good lighting. They don't have good sound. They haven't really thought out the flow of their day. They've booked too many, they've allowed too many people to come in, and he caps the number of attendees. He has everybody, I believe, on pretty much the same track all day, so you're not going to miss anything. He has surprises, and he also has really thoughtful things he does for, in our case, Jim and I were vendors there, but also for audience members, where it's just, I have a picture somewhere of here's two guys coming in with 50, 75 pizzas that come in for lunch. Yeah. Boom. That's just part of your thing, is you're going to have, and everybody's together and everybody's having pizza. And if you haven't had a chance to go, listener, I would put that really high in your list of, if you can get in, you got to sign up early, definitely go. So, Mikayla, I'm guessing you've been involved forever to some degree, right?
Yeah, I've been going since I was a kid. I was there for the first year all the way up until like now. And I'm sure Steve could explain a lot more about like the reason why he put it on, but there was an old magic convention here in Iowa that happened before Abercorn. And I went to that one too. I was like 12 or 13 around that time. And it was not very well attended, and it just wasn't very organized, and there was a lot of things. And then Steve just didn't want that to be what represented Iowa and his hometown and everything. And he thought he could do it better, and he was definitely right.
Yeah.
And for him, it's really just a labor of love. It's like his way of giving back to the magic world. And it's very well thought out, and it's very smart from the structure of the convention to, yeah, like you said, the amazing people he's able to bring in. Mm-hmm. And now we're getting to a point where he's kind of slowly stepping back a little bit more, and I'm starting to take over most of the convention. And I could not have done any of that without what he's done to set everything up and lay the groundwork.
It's an enterprise well worth supporting, and I'm really interested to see what you bring to it as years go by. But you've got such a strong base, and he's such a good showman in the sense that he understands a show. He understands how to put on a show, which is a skill in and of itself.
Yeah, he's the greatest guy.
So besides Abercorn and the Magician School and the library shows and the school shows, what do you see being next for you?
Oh gosh, I'm still trying to figure out that myself. I'm not sure. I feel like I have a few different things spinning, but I'm not sure which direction I want to go exactly. I kind of want to keep all of the plates spinning in a sense, and evolve like the Magician School. Like I want to figure out how I can make it less dependent on these grants, maybe more by private funding and those kinds of things, or exploring that. Magic show wise, I want to go on tour. Long term, I want to do small theater shows. Mario, the Maker Magician, and Katie, they're doing all these family shows in these small theaters, and that's kind of what I would love to do. And that kind of direction is something I'm aiming for, and I'm kind of putting in some of the steps to figure out how to get to that point. And yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm headed. I know it's kind of vague, and I don't exactly know the exact direction how I'm going to get there, but it's exciting to figure out what kind of the next steps are I'm going to take.
I am very curious as to what her next steps are going to be.
Whatever they are, I'm going to follow her because she's just so clever, so smart. She does, on top of that, she's doing the work.
Yes, she's getting it done. And if you and I had that sort of brain power at that age, oh dear,
we'd be right where we are now.
Probably because we would have screwed it up.
But 3 to 5 shows a day, day.
Now, let me just say, this is, I'm talking to you. You have come off of your busy season, or you do the Renaissance Festival on weekends. And then right after that, you go into your Halloween show. I know that you used to do years ago. Didn't you do 3 shows a day of the summer show? Did that ever happen?
We actually do. Yeah. On Saturdays, we do it 3 times. It's a 2-hour show that we do 3 times. So you do the math. It's pretty intense on Saturdays. And then Sundays, we only do it twice, but we stretch the second show out. So instead of being 2 hours, it's usually 2.5 or 2:40. So.
Wow. Okay. So that's 3 2-hour shows a day, as opposed to 5 1-hour shows a day, plus traveling between sites. I was just amazed.
Yeah, me too. But think of how, and we talked about it in the interview, how much better you are at the end of your run than you are at the beginning of your run. After things have settled and and she said something that I do all the time, is that sometimes somebody will say something and I will look at my partner on stage and go, yeah, that's part of the show next time. Yeah. And I'll just be honest with the audience. We're taking that. That's going to be part of the show. So congratulations. We don't have any money for writers, but I can get you more wine. So it's smart. Oftentimes you'll get some great lines right from the audience that can be, let's say, co-opted. Can I use that term?
Yes. And it's being smart enough to remember it and then incorporate it. That's the tricky part, is remembering to add it back in.
Funny never escapes. Once it gets into my gravity, I seldom forget to include it. In fact, our mutual friend, Jay Nickerson, when I was a very young actor and looked up to Jay, I still look up to Jay, but as a young actor, I really looked up to him. We were talking about funny, and Jay said, because he's incredibly funny, at least half of being funny, and maybe more than that, is having a good memory and just cataloging everything and being able to go quickly, there's the piece I need, and stick it right here. And I never forgot that. And so I do listen and to comedians, not necessarily to steal material, but just to stay in rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And Jay's idea that memory is at least half of being funny is dead on, or has proven itself to be dead on in my case.
Anyway, the other thing that really surprised me, because I don't know if we actually started to mansplain during the interview, but we were saying, hey, maybe you should franchise this. It seems like a good idea. And she said, yeah, I'm currently working with about 350 school districts. I think we reach 47 out of 50 states. It's like, oh, well, okay.
Okay. We'll sit quietly over here in the back seat and just let you drive, because you don't need us, 2 old men, giving you advice. She's got the bases covered, and wherever she's going next, I want to be there, because I think it's so smart. The stuff that she's doing, just great. Just great.
And one of the places she's going next, which is going to make life difficult for you, is because she's taking over Abercorn because Steve is stepping back from that a bit. She's moving it to September, which is going to be something where you're just never going to
out of it forever.
Well, until you get fired from Renaissance Festival.
Well, or 5 years, whichever comes first.
Is that it? Do you have a 5-year plan on that?
Maybe a 6-year plan. It could be a 10-year plan. It could be a 1-year plan. I really don't have a plan, I guess is what I'm saying.
I guess that's what you're saying. Yes. Okay. That's fair. That's totally fair. Anyway, it's so delightful to talk to her. I'm sure our paths will cross again. If you get a chance to head to Des Moines for Abercorn Absolutely do it. And if you are interested in some of the work she's doing in schools and libraries and things, get in touch with her. Her website is in the show notes. And maybe she can help your career along a little bit.
Amen. Yeah.
Amen.
I'm reminded of an episode of The West Wing where Sam is having a discussion with an intern. And at the end of the discussion, he finds her so smart that he says, you know, when you graduate, come see me for a job. And she turns around and says, I'll tell you what, you seem like a nice enough guy. When I graduate, why don't you come see me for a job? And that's the kind of what I took away from Mikayla.
Yes.
Can we help you? Maybe you can help us. She's terrific. She's just terrific. It's a touchstone, that show, for me. I'm surprised it hasn't come up in any of I Love That's yet.
Well, it still might. And speaking of that, maybe it's going to happen today. It's this is the I Love That segment. For those of you who use the handy menu feature on your podcast, you can jump directly to the segment anytime you want. I don't know if anyone even uses the menu feature, but it's there for you because we care. Anyway, it's your turn to, and I don't know if that appears on Spotify. I'm hoping it does. I put it in. It should appear. But anyway, it's your turn. What are you loving this time around?
I have a great affinity for an actor that is probably about my age. And when I was younger and he was younger, he was one of those guys that I absolutely thought, holy mackerel, he has got all the tools. And he has just come out with a book.
Are you talking about Steve Gutenberg?
Steve is, no disrespect to Steve, but no, I'm talking about Michael J. Fox. And Michael J. Fox has just come out with a book called Future Boy about his years doing both Michael P. Keaton on the television, and then Marty McFly in all the Back to the Future movies. And he has taken the good fortune, for me at least, to read the book himself. And so I am listening to Michael J. Fox in his brand new book, it's semi-new, called Future Boy.
The concept of the space-time continuum was first introduced by Albert Einstein in his theory of general relativity, which revolutionized our understanding of gravity and the nature of the universe. It refers to the four-dimensional mathematical model that combines the three dimensions of space and one dimension of time. In Einstein's theory, space and time are not absolute and unchanging, but instead are affected by the presence of matter and energy, and this in turn affects the behavior of objects within it. You got that? Good. I have no idea what the hell any of it means. Everywhere I go, someone expects to engage me in a cogent conversation about the space-time continuum, so let's just get this out of the way right now. Yes, this principle ruled my life during a stretch of 1985, but I require a computer robot to properly define it, and I still don't understand. Where's Doc when I need him?
And I am loving it. So this is the perfect, I love that. Speaking of Jay Nickerson, who's now come up a second time, when we were doing summer theater together, summer stock in southern Minnesota, Back to the Future was an enormous big hit that summer. And we were working in a small town at a college in St. Peter, Minnesota, and we would usually rehearse early in the mornings on Saturdays, and then we'd have Saturday afternoons off, because we did Saturday night shows. So we would have our lunch in the college cafeteria, which was part of the incredible time we enjoyed together at that summer theater. And then oftentimes, even though we'd seen it 10 or 12 times prior to this, we'd jump in my car and drive to the next big town, Mankato, and see Back to the Future. It was just such a fun summer, and I have such good memories of that time period in my life, and they're all sort of clicked in to Michael J. Fox as a performer. So I am enjoying I love that Future Boy on Audible. You talk about a great narrator, John. Holy mackerel. If you could get him, I'd ditch me in a second.
I don't think we can get him. Yeah. But I will say that as you've been talking about it, I went on to the Hennepin County Library and have put a hold on the book, as I'd rather read it than hear it, because you're my only narrator. And I am number 91 on 26 copies that they bought, and I'm number 91 to get that book from the library.
It's delightful. It's just delightful, and he's delightful. And I think, again, in my youth, I really emulated him. I talk about watching, remembering, and finding ways to put it into my own work. Many of Michael J. Fox's his zeitgeist, I guess, is something that I really touched on myself for. He's terrific, and I really love the book, and I think you will too, John. Whether you listen to it or read it, all of you should. If you, like me, are a Back to the Future guy or a Michael J. Fox person, get this because you'll love it. You'll love it. I'm loving it.
Well, we've always said, hey, there's a chance that sometime we'll both say the same. I love that. We have not this time, but I'm also focusing on someone who came, I think, into our attention in the late 70s, early 80s. There's a great documentary on Prime Video, but it might be showing up elsewhere, called I Like Me, and it's about John Candy.
Oh.
And it was produced and directed by Colin Hanks, son of Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
And it is a really loving tribute to an amazing performer. And what grabbed me in the first instant of it was they had audio of Dan Aykroyd's eulogy at John Candy's funeral. And I'll just play a bit of it here.
This is no meager life we reflect on today. This is as full a life as any human can live. Joy, emotional abundance of spirit, infectious rage, a tinge of Lugosi-like madness, with his bottom reverse vampire teeth and all, a titan of a gentle golden man. Magnificent of visage, eyes and frame, let none be deceived by what the less enlightened would label as girth, for there are many witnesses to the clamping power of his mitts, and the steel in his forearms, the quickness and lightness of foot and leg. Challenge him and you would be hurled away like a toy. There's a word in our language we don't hear much anymore, but it applies to Candy. The word is grand. He was a grand man. John Franklin Candy, devoted son, brother, altar boy, student, salesman, stage, radio, and television writer and performer, world-famous comedy ambassador, farce and dramatic actor, international feature film star, director, businessman, connoisseur, percussionist, charitable benefactor, husband, father, and the sweetest, most generous person ever known to me.
Now, Jim, because of Zoom's technology, you weren't able to hear any of that. I will maybe send it to you as its own little file, but file it away because I want you to do your own version of that at my funeral. And I think you're the best one to do it. And the way Aykroyd speaks about Candy is so loving. And it's a terrific documentary. We learned stuff that we didn't know about him. Right up front, Bill Murray says this is going to be a pretty boring documentary because I don't think you'll find anybody who'll say a word against him. And that's true, although he did have his own demons and his own problems. One of the most interesting quotes in it was from Macaulay Culkin, who appeared with him in Uncle Buck and was in Home Alone with him, although he doesn't appear with him in Home Alone. And 40-something Macaulay Culkin says to Colin Hanks, the interviewer, when you think of a John Hughes actor, everybody thinks Molly Ringwald or they think of me. He said, Molly made 3 films with John Hughes. I made 3 films with John Hughes. John Candy made 9 films with John Hughes.
Oh, my
He
goodness.
is the ultimate John Hughes actor. Entire movies were written for John Candy. They were great, great friends. So it is an ultimately uplifting, although occasionally sad, documentary, and it just delves into who this guy was and his desire to please everyone who was in the room. Anyway, I think you, Jim, in particular, would like it, but I think our listeners would like it as well.
Yeah, I will absolutely watch it.
I Like Me, which is from a speech that he gives in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah. There are actually coffee mugs with that on there, and I just saw that Ryan Reynolds was such a big fan of John Candy that in one of his films he's holding an I Like Me coffee mug. John
Yeah.
Candy was a force of nature and
He was.
sorely missed.
Yeah.
Not just by John Hughes.
But all of us. Anyway, that's I love that portion of the show.
Boy, I like that, both those. I'm gonna. That's great for me.
Yeah.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm thrilled with both of those choices. But let's get down to business. What do you say, Jono? I read chapter 20 last time, so before I launch into 21, just recap that chapter 20 for us.
Well, as is often the case, Eli got it right and then he got it wrong. And they've headed back, he and Harry, to the magic circle. And that chapter ended with them seeing De Vries chained to the device that he had created on the stage at the magic circle, and then someone putting a gun into Eli's back. And that ends chapter 20 and takes us right into chapter 21.
Chapter 21.
You should see the looks on your faces, love,
She said with a grin.
Classic, just classic.
It was Angelica, standing in the main aisle near the front row of seats, looking over at us as Harry and I stood frozen in the doorway. She wasn't alone. The kid from Davenport's magic shop, Liam, was hovering next to her, looking pained and uncomfortable. It may have been due to the situation, or it might just have been traditional teenage angst. I'd only seen the two of them side by side once before, when I was rushing backstage after the onstage stabbing of Oscar Kerhonen. So I think I can be excused for not having seen the family resemblance at the time, but it was clearly evident as they stood before me. And it may have been my imagination or the adrenaline or both, but I thought I also saw a resemblance to Miss Hess. And suddenly, the recurrence of the nightmare English breakfast image made sense. I wasn't remembering the breakfast. I was remembering the family I had seen while eating that monstrosity. The family at one of the other tables, the ones I thought might be Russian, who were squirreling away food for a missing family member. I was eating that horrible English breakfast while they conversed.
Это дайдошки,
the old Russian grandmother had said to her offspring.
It's for pop-pop,
had been her daughter's translation to her child. They were doing it for their father and their grandfather. I looked over at Angelica and Liam and realized I must have a sort of idiotic and not particularly helpful superpower, the rare ability to put together all the clues in a life-threatening situation, but always about 10 seconds too late. It had happened before and clearly had just happened again. Looks like we're here just in time for an Archie Banks family reunion, I said with far more bravado than I actually felt. It's a shame Dad's still dead and Mom's on her way to a long spell in prison. I'm sorry, Harry said, looking from his friend chained to the illusion to the woman holding the gun on us. What family reunion? Harry, unless I'm very much mistaken, the woman pointing the gun at us is the daughter of Archie Banks and Miss Hess, and the kid is her son, Archie's grandson.
Just so,
Angelica said. Etta Daidoski, I said to no one in particular. So we were wrong about Archie having no heirs, Harry said quietly. By a generation or two, I agreed. And I think the addition of these two players neatly explains the issues we were having with this so-called mystery. It was Angelica who lured Hector to his death at that nearby hotel. He certainly would have been open to following her there. Or anywhere, for that matter, knowing Hector, Harry added. My mistake was forgetting she mentioned being trained as a nurse. That would have given her the skills she needed to drug and intubate him.
And I had thought my education was a bloody waste of time,
she said with a wry smile.
How wrong I was.
And I'm guessing young Liam here was the one in charge of moving the chair on stage for that first night's show, I continued. My guess is he was also responsible for setting the trap for whoever was unlucky enough to take a seat on the chair. He scowled up at us.
Just did what I was told, he said with an insolent growl. Didn't want to be part of this rubbish plan from the start.
With her free hand, Angelica gave him a quick rap across the back of the head.
Enough of your whining, you spotty get. Take the cuffs and lock them to the wheel.
She pointed to a small pile of handcuffs on the front of the stage. Liam meandered over and picked them up, then headed toward us, gesturing we should move over to the Catherine wheel. I only saw you interact with Miss Hess a couple of times, I said to Angelica, who kept the gun aimed at us as we moved across the stage. You were both so mean and disagreeable to each other, I should have recognized immediately you could only be related.
Family, you got to love 'em,
Angelica said, with a sardonic smile. And then Liam got to work. I didn't do any escape illusions in my act, besides an occasionally funny but no longer PC routine with the Chinese finger trap, but I've been around enough of them to distinguish the difference between real handcuffs and the gaffed variety. Sadly, the cuffs Liam was using on us were decidedly genuine. Davis DeVries was slumped on the floor on one side of the wheel, but I could now see he was still breathing, which was currently the only good news we had. Liam made Harry sit on the opposite side of the illusion and locked him in tightly, with his arms positioned between two of the large metal spokes. He got more dramatic with my binding, cuffing me with my arms outstretched, like I was in the midst of performing the illusion. Unfortunately, he was using very solid and very real handcuffs, as opposed to the leather breakaway straps, which were part of the trick. To complete the effect, he also cuffed my ankles to the apparatus. As interesting as all this might be, I said to Angelica, who had kept her pistol trained on us the whole time, I'm not really sure how tethering us to the Catherine wheel completes the revenge plot your crazy old mother hatched. I don't remember anything in your dad's whacked-out suicide note about you tied me up and gave me annoying welts on my wrists.
I don't think that's where she's headed on this one, Eli, Harry said quietly.
Right you are, dearie, Angelica said with surprising warmth. We'll be sticking to both the spirit and the letter of the old man's note on this, our final performance.
I racked my brain trying to remember what the final statement in Archie Banks' suicide note had been, but I was coming up empty.
Let me give you a hint, she said, sensing the blank I was drawing. What do you think of when I say the Magic Castle and Halloween?
I knew there was a connection, but it wasn't coming to me. Then I heard a slight gasp from Harry.
The Halloween fire at the Magic Castle in Los Angeles, he said slowly. It was a few years back. No one was hurt, but it did plenty of damage.
It did indeed, she said. But it will be a mere footnote compared to the Magic Circle fire we're creating today. This will be one for the history books.
The phrasing from Archie Banks' suicide note came back to me. While my career goes up in flames, you ride high on success, I recited, fueled by the failure you heaped upon me.
That's my old dad. Always had a way with words. And, she added, seeing a thought cross my face as I glanced up at the ceiling, don't be thinking the sprinkler system you just took a gander at is going to do you a bit of good. My smart boy here has hacked the security system and shut them off, along with all the fire alerts.
Liam was just finishing attaching the final handcuff to my leg.
It was dead easy,
he said, both proud and annoyed.
A toddler could have pulled it off.
He stood up and stepped back, assessing his work.
There, these three gents aren't going anywhere anytime soon. The same cannot be said for us, Angelica said,
waving her son off the stage with the pistol.
We have some burning issues to attend to downstairs in the library. Don't worry, though. you will see and feel the results of our handiwork soon enough."
They both headed up the aisle together, and then Angelica turned back.
"I meant to tell you, by the way," she said. "I really enjoyed that card trick of yours. The ambitious dog. Nice stuff. A solid fooler."
"What, were you another happy attendee of Jake North's bogus magic lecture?" I said, for just a moment feeling more annoyed about that whole kerfluffle than my current critical situation.
"No, the lecture notes," she said.
"Well, I hate to burst your balloon about Jake North," I said, using the only weapon at my disposal. "But he didn't write those notes. He couldn't have."
"I know that, love," she said,
opening her purse and sliding the pistol into it.
"That's because I wrote those bloody lecture notes. He paid me. By the way, that bloke is a complete wanker."
"How nice," I said, my voice dripping in sarcasm, that in our final moments together, we were able to find some common ground.
"Yes, I believe there's hope for humanity yet," she said.
And then she and her son disappeared up the aisle and out of the theater. We were silent for several long moments while the gravity of our situation settled over us. "Well, here's another fine mess," I said. From my shackled position, I could look down out of the corner of my eye and barely see Harry bound to one side of the machine. However, I was able to hear him chuckle at my attempt at humor. "Well, I died on this stage on many occasions years ago," he said. "This will just be one more time." "And what was it that did you in the last time?" He chuckled again. "It was an ill-advised attempt at a sub-trunk transposition," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice, "with an assistant who was less than agile, shall we say." "Not Aunt Alice?" "Oh, no. This was way before I met your aunt," he said. "You've seen the Pendragon's version of the substitution trunk, right? Metamorphosis?" "Seen it? I've studied it obsessively. I've gone through it frame by frame on YouTube like it was the Zapruder film," I said. The trick was one of the closest things to a miracle I had ever seen, in which magician and assistant switch places from inside a trunk to out in the blink of an eye, or actually less than that. "Well, in our version, I believe there was enough time during the transposition to boil a 3-minute egg," Harry said. "That girl moved like molasses, only slower." "Where's she today?" "Probably still trying to get out of that damn trunk," Harry said. I looked around the empty theater, thinking about the fire Angelica and Liam were setting elsewhere in the building. "Lot of flammable stuff downstairs, is there?" I asked. "Oh, my, yes," Harry said. "The library is down there. Hundreds of books, maybe thousands. Not to mention all the ephemera, posters, handbills, that sort of thing. A real tinderbox, really." I said, not really sure how to respond to this news. "Well, if nothing else, this settles a discussion Megan and I had earlier this week." "About?" It was sort of bizarre, really. Harry and I were just chatting about this and that as if nothing dire was happening. "When we were out at Highgate Cemetery," I said, "we got to talking about whether we each wanted to be buried or cremated." "I'll say this for you, Eli," he said. "You sure know how to sweet-talk a girl." Anyway, I was making the case for cremation. Looks like I'll be getting my wish. "Oh, I don't know," Harry said. I could hear him shifting his position, probably trying to get more comfortable. "Since we're on the 3rd floor and they're likely starting the fire in the basement, we can take some relief in the fact we'll probably die of smoke inhalation and not actually be burned alive." When this got no reaction from me, he offered a quick addendum. "No relief at all, I suppose." Few more long moments of silence. I sniffed the air, sure I was beginning to smell smoke, although it easily could have been my imagination. "Lucky thing for DeVries," Harry said out of the blue. "How do you figure?"
He's already out. By the time he wakes up, we'll all be dead.
I wasn't fully tracking on that logic, but I turned my head in the other direction to see if DeVries might be coming around. From my limited angle, he looked just as unconscious as he had when we walked in.
Too bad for the old guy, I said.
He never got to see the debut of the Catherine Wheel.
The Davis DeVries Catherine Wheel,
Harry corrected. Yes, of course, I said. And then a thought occurred to me. This might be, I began to think, one of those rare moments where I figured out the solution before the disaster, as opposed to in the midst of it. Although, to be fair, we were sort of in the thick of it already. Harry, remember that speech you used to give to young magicians about how there are all kinds of rooms in the House of Magic?
I do indeed. I borrowed the concept from Eugene Berger.
And you'd say something like, it's okay to spend most of your time in your own room, but you should also get out from time to time in order to have some idea of what's going on in the rest of the house?
I think I was more elegant in my phraseology, but that's the gist of it.
Even as a kid, I remember how it always drove you crazy when magicians would only focus on one area of magic, like cards or coins, and be completely ignorant about everything else.
Well, when I was starting out, he said, a magician was a generalist. It was required. You had to have a close-up show, a walk-around show, a cabaret show, a kids show, a big-box illusion show. Otherwise, you'd starve.
That's not the case today, is it?
Kids today, they have no idea,
he grumbled, starting to warm to the topic, and then he stopped.
Is this really the time to get into that old argument, Eli? Or are you just trying to take my mind off our imminent fate?
A little of both, I admitted. It just occurred to me in the short conversations I'd had with Angelica and Liam, they both seemed quite well-versed in their own area of magic, but they also seemed woefully unaware of anything outside their small sphere.
Well, if they happen to wander back in, be sure to hit them with that. They will likely buckle under your biting observation and free us with their deepest apologies.
The point is, when they shackled us to the Catherine Wheel,
the Davis DeVries Catherine Wheel.
Will you let me finish? I snapped.
Sorry, I'm getting a bit punchy. You were saying?
When they shackled us to this illusion, they thought they were binding us to a huge, solidly built metal device, an impenetrable fortress. When in reality, I let my words hang in the air, but Harry finished my thought for me.
But in reality, it was designed to be set up or taken down in 20 minutes and packed away in 2 cases.
And as DeVries was so fond of reminding everyone, I continued, it goes together and comes apart without any tools.
Without any tools,
Harry repeated slowly. I turned as far as the cuffs would let me and started to examine the spokes of the large wheel. I could hear Harry doing the same thing at the base of the illusion. Hard to be sure, I said, but it looks like the spokes might break down into maybe 3 pieces each. I can see the seams between the joints. The method Liam had used to bind me to the machine provided me with very little movement of my hands. However, the clanging and scraping I heard coming from Harry's area suggested not only did he have more freedom of movement, but he had also started to make some progress. What do you think? I asked, unable to see what, if any, advancement he was making.
Well,
he said, the strain of reaching around the spokes apparent in his voice,
I don't want to make any promises I can't keep, but we may get out of this contraption faster than my tortoise-like assistant was able to maneuver out of the trunk those many years ago.
There was more scraping of metal on metal, more grunting, and then a sound that made me smile with relief. It was Harry, and all he said was one word.
Bingo!
And then Harry said, Bingo. Of course, Harry figures out that DeVries would design the machine ultimately for easy packing. That would be because he's a smart magician. All other things being equal, you have to be able to pack this thing up and ship it quite easily. And as Harry points out, Angelica and Liam only know one area of magic, and there's many rooms in that house. And
thank you, Eugene.
Harry realized, that DeVries would have devised the machine to be easily taken apart. So
pack small, play big.
So, which begs the question, although I believe when we use that expression, we're using it wrong. Maybe we'll look into that at some other time. I know you used to be the assistant to a magician.
How much, great magician.
Yeah. How much packing and unpacking did you do in that role?
Yeah, there was really a lot. My brother was very, very thorough about the experience he wanted to provide for the audience, and we needed a substantial backstage. Sometimes we were doing the dollhouse, which if you are not a magician, it's you wheel out a small little dollhouse. When I say small, I mean, big enough to hide a person in it. And then you'd show it empty and bang, my sister-in-law would pop out of it. So building that, we had a great big backdrop that had velvet curtains that my sister-in-law had made, and it was all pipe and drape. Before pipe and drape was sort of the standard in the industry, my brother was ahead of the curve on that. We used pipes like you would if you were building, I don't know, the Taj Mahal. They were big and they were very strong, and they screwed into 2x4s that we then weighted with 50-pound weights so that they would stay stable.
How big a vehicle were you guys bringing this all in?
Usually it would just fit in his vehicle. Sometimes we would take two vehicles as things, but there were trunks, and I think of those days very, very fondly when I was in late grade school and through most of high school. Those winter seasons where it got really busy at Christmas time for my brother, and we would be doing, a show a day at least, and sometimes two shows. We do one,
but not 3 to 5 shows.
Not 3 to 5. We never got to 3 to 5, but we often did 3 or 5 in a week, but not in a day. But yeah, I mean, there were doves and rabbits, and it was a glorious. I remember one Christmas where we had probably 20 some odd shows, and when it was over, I wept like a baby because it was so much fun, and I had such a great time with my brother and my sister-in-law Sue that, it was like any other theater piece that I've ever been involved with. When it's over, it can be a relief, at least for me now. But back in the day, it was always a very emotional time when something I had poured work into and loved comes to an end. It can be emotional. So, and it certainly was in my youth. And as I've gotten older, I've learned to weather that storm a little better.
A lot less crying beforehand and after,
and a lot less pipe and drape, to be honest.
Oh man, pipe and drape. Yeah. We couldn't have done A Christmas Carol without pipe and drape.
Pipe and drape, exactly. Very important.
Anyway, we are racing toward the end of the book. That was chapter 21. Next time we're going to listen to chapter 22, and we're also going to revisit something kind of cool from John Armstrong, who reinvented himself from a close-up magician to a stage magician. That's not what we're going to talk about, but the stuff we're going to talk about with him is really central to your success as a magician. So we're going to do that and chapter 22 of The Linking Rings next time. Until then, Jim, so good to see you again.
Right back at you, John. I haven't seen you in so long that I've grown a beard.
Well, it must be that time of year when the beard comes in and you become Mr. Charles Dickens. I can always tell what season it is by Jim's beard. All right.
By Jim's facial hair.
That's it for us, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Let's be kind to one another, huh?
This has been Behind the Page, the Eli Marks podcast, with your hosts, John Gaspard and Jim Cunningham. Produced by Alberts Bridge Books at Grass Lake Studios. Find this podcast and all the books in the Eli Marks series at EliMarksMysteries.com. That's ELIMARKS Mysteries.com. And thanks for listening.